They say family is life's greatest gift, but sometimes it cuts deeper than any blade. My name is Elizabeth Harper, and for 34 years, I believed my sacrifices for my family would one day be repaid with love and appreciation. I was mistaken. Before we dive into my story, let me know where you're reading from. If this resonates, stick around. Tomorrow, I've got something special to share. The moment I saw the truth about my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law wasn't when they forgot my birthday or when they asked me to babysit for the 6th weekend in a row. It was when my daughter-in-law, Sarah, met my gaze and said, "We think it's best if you sit out Christmas this year, Elizabeth. Nathan and Emily are hosting, and well, you don't quite mesh with their vision." Those words broke something deep within me. After all I'd given, sleepless nights nursing a sick child, draining my retirement to fund their dream home, quietly covering their mortgage for 3 years, I was told I didn't belong at my own son's holiday table. That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. If I wasn't family enough for their Christmas, then maybe I wasn't family enough to keep paying for the roof over their heads. What followed changed everything, for them and especially for me. At 62, I never imagined my life would look like this. I pictured retirement surrounded by family, tending a small garden, spoiling my grandchildren. Instead, I'm alone in a house that feels too vast, too hollow, filled with memories that now seem to taunt me. My story began in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, a town big enough for its own hospital, but small enough that gossip travels fast. I started as a nurse at Mercy General right after school, where I met James, my late husband. He was a hospital administrator with the warmest smile I'd ever seen. We married young, bought a modest home on Cedar Lane, and dreamed of a big family. Life, though, had other plans. After years of trying, we welcomed only one child, Daniel. From the moment I held him, I knew I'd do anything for him. When he was diagnosed with severe asthma at 3, I cut back my hours at the hospital to care for him. Those late nights, watching his breathing, rushing to the ER at the first wheeze, they forged a bond I thought was unbreakable. James and I poured everything into Daniel's future. We saved for his college, driving old cars and skipping vacations. When he showed a knack for computers, we scraped together funds for his first PC. When he wanted to attend coding camps, I worked extra shifts to make it happen. James never saw Daniel graduate college. A heart attack took him when Daniel was 20, leaving me a widow at 44. The life insurance barely covered the funeral and the last of our mortgage. Devastated but determined, I kept going for Daniel. "Mom, maybe sell the house," Daniel said one evening, a month after James's death. "It's too big for just you, and the money could cover my tuition." His words stung. This was our family home, filled with James's memory, but I pushed the hurt aside. He was grieving, I told myself, thinking practically. "This is our home." I said softly, "Your father and I worked hard for it. Where would you stay on breaks?" "No, I'll take extra shifts." And I did. Grueling 60-hour weeks, often overnight, until Daniel earned his computer science degree. Exhausted but beaming with pride, I watched Daniel cross the stage at his college graduation, the first in our family to earn a degree. "I did it, Mom," he said, wrapping me in a tight hug after the ceremony. "I couldn't have done it without you." Those words warmed my heart, a fleeting reward for years of sacrifice. Daniel landed a job at a tech firm in Willow Creek, meaning he'd stay close to home. I was thrilled. While he built his career, I continued my work at Mercy General, where Dr. William Bennett, the new chief of medicine, became a trusted colleague. A widower who lost his wife to cancer, William had no children and often praised my dedication, calling me the hospital's most reliable nurse. 2 years into his job, Daniel met Sarah Coleman, a striking, ambitious woman from one of the wealthiest families in nearby Brookhaven. Her father, Charles, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships, and her mother, Emily, was renowned for her lavish charity galas. From the start, I sensed their world was far removed from ours. "Mom, I want you to meet Sarah," Daniel said, bringing her to our Cedar Lane home for dinner. "She's in marketing at the company, and she's incredible." Sarah was courteous but detached, her eyes scanning our modest living room with a faint air of disdain, lingering on the worn sofa and faded family photos. "Your home is charming," she said, her tone suggesting otherwise. "Daniel says you've lived here since you married?" "Yes," I replied, forcing warmth to bridge the growing distance. James and I bought it when we were starting out. It's simple, but it's full of love. Sarah offered a tight smile. That's what counts, right? Though Daniel and I have been eyeing properties in Crestwood Heights. Have you seen those new developments? They're stunning. Crestwood Heights was Willow Creek's priciest neighborhood, with homes far beyond anything I could imagine. That sounds wonderful, I said, catching Daniel's eye. He looked away quickly. 6 months later, they announced their engagement. I was overjoyed for Daniel, but uneasy about their differing worlds. Still, I welcomed Sarah and tried to contribute to the wedding plans. Elizabeth, Emily Coleman said at our first planning meeting, we've secured the Brookhaven Country Club and hired the state's top planner. Everything's handled, you don't need to worry. I felt pushed aside, but reminded myself this was about Daniel and Sarah. I offered to help with the rehearsal dinner. Oh, Emily said, exchanging a glance with Sarah. We've already booked it at Chateau Laurent. Charles knows the owner. I see, I said softly. Is there anything I can do? Sarah patted my hand like I was a child. We know you want to help, Elizabeth. Maybe you could assemble the wedding favors. Swallowing my pride, I nodded. A mother supports her child's happiness, even when it stings. The wedding was extravagant. 8 bridesmaids in designer gowns, ice sculptures at every table, and a band that once played for a reality TV star. In my best dress, I felt out of place among the Coleman's elite circle. Daniel barely stopped by my table. Having fun, Mom? He asked, his tie loosened from dancing. Of course, sweetheart. It's beautiful. I'm so happy for you. He grinned, relieved. Sarah's dad is talking about moving me into the business side of the company. Says I've got potential beyond coding. That's fantastic, I said, meaning it, though a quiet ache grew as I felt Daniel slipping further into the Coleman's orbit. After the honeymoon, they began house hunting in earnest. One weekend, they invited me to see a sprawling colonial in Crestwood Heights, 4 bedrooms, a chef's kitchen, and a backyard overlooking a serene lake. Isn't it perfect, Mom? Daniel asked, his eyes alight. It was stunning, but I couldn't fathom how they'd afford it on his young career and lingering student loans. It's lovely, I said, my voice steady despite my doubts. But, Daniel, are you sure it's within your budget? I asked, my voice soft with concern. Sarah's smile tightened. My parents are covering the down payment as a wedding gift. We've crunched the numbers. It'll work. What I didn't know then was that making it work would soon mean leaning on me. A month after they settled into their Crestwood Heights home, Daniel called, his voice heavy with strain. Mom, I hate to ask, but we're in a pinch. The property taxes here are steeper than we planned, and with Sarah's car payment and new furniture, my heart sank, but I didn't hesitate. How much do you need? $5,000 would get us caught up, he said, relief evident in his tone. The next day, I withdrew the money from my savings, funds I'd been setting aside for a small condo to ease my retirement years. But Daniel needed me, and that was what mattered. This became a pattern. Every few months, Daniel called with another temporary crisis. The air conditioning unit failed. Sarah's company downsized, requiring her to pay for new certifications. They replaced the hardwood floors because Sarah disliked the shade. Each time, I dipped deeper into my savings. Each time, Daniel swore it was just until they were stable. Each time, their gratitude grew thinner. If you're enjoying this story, consider subscribing. It means the world to us. Now, back to the journey. Then came their biggest request. One evening, Daniel arrived at my Cedar Lane home alone, sitting at the kitchen table where we'd shared countless meals and memories after James's death. He fidgeted with his wedding ring. Mom, I need to talk about something serious. Sarah and I are struggling with the mortgage. The interest rate spiked, and with everything else, my stomach knotted. I knew what was coming. How far behind are you? I asked. He stared at his hands. 3 months. But it's not just that. The payments are too high right now. Sarah's dad had some business setbacks, so they can't help. I took a deep breath. What are you asking, Daniel? If you could cover the mortgage for a while, just until I get that promotion or Sarah lands a better job. We can't lose the house, Mom. It's our home. Our home. The words stung, echoing the time Daniel suggested I sell the house James and I had built after his father's death. Still, I agreed. I couldn't bear the thought of my son and his wife facing foreclosure's shame. I'll talk to Dr. Bennett about extra hours, I said. At 60, the overnight shifts at Mercy General were grueling, but I'd manage. Daniel's relief was palpable. "You're the best, Mom. We'll pay you back once we're solid." That night, alone in my kitchen, I calculated the cost. Their Crestwood Heights mortgage was nearly double mine. Covering it meant delaying my retirement indefinitely and slashing my already frugal budget. But Daniel was my son, my only tie to James. What choice did I have? The next day, I met with Dr. William Bennett. "Elizabeth, you're already working more than someone your age should," he said, concern creasing his brow. "Is everything okay?" "Just building my retirement fund," I lied. He didn't buy it but didn't press. "I can get you extra shifts in the cardiac unit. They're always short-staffed. But promise you'll take care of yourself." I nodded, knowing it was a promise I'd struggle to keep. For 3 years, I paid their mortgage without complaint, transferring funds directly to their account. I skipped meals at the hospital cafeteria, delayed repairs on my aging home, and let my car go without maintenance. I declined friends' invitations if they cost money. Meanwhile, my relationship with Daniel and Sarah shifted. Weekly Sunday dinners became monthly, then rare. Their calls grew brief, their excuses frequent. Sarah stopped asking about my life. During visits, I noticed their lavish redecorations, a designer sectional, imported rugs, while I pinched pennies to keep them afloat. "That new couch is stunning," I said during one visit, eyeing the costly piece. "It's from a high-end showroom in the city," Sarah replied casually. "We figured we deserved a little splurge. Mental health matters, you know." I bit my tongue, thinking of the leaky faucet I couldn't afford to fix. Later, I overheard Sarah on the phone with her mother. "I know, Mom, it's exhausting having to include her, but Daniel feels obligated. At least she helps financially." My face burned with humiliation. Helps financially. I was funding their entire mortgage, sacrificing my health to sustain their lavish lifestyle. Yet Sarah reduced my efforts to helps financially. The true breaking point came the week before Thanksgiving last year. A stubborn cough had plagued me for weeks, but I pushed through my shifts at Mercy General despite growing exhaustion. One evening, Dr. William Bennett caught me leaning against the nurse's station, struggling to breathe. "That's it, Elizabeth," he said firmly. "I'm ordering a chest X-ray now." The next day, the diagnosis hit: pneumonia, complicated by exhaustion and a weakened immune system. "You need complete rest," Dr. Bennett insisted. "I'm putting you on medical leave for at least 4 weeks." I protested, thinking of Daniel and Sarah's mortgage payment due in 2 weeks, but he was resolute. "This isn't negotiable. Your health comes first." That night, alone in my Cedar Lane home, rain tapping the windows, I faced my own needs for the first time in years. I decided to call Daniel, explain my situation, and ask if they could cover their mortgage for a month or 2 while I recovered. When I called the next morning, Sarah answered. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice icy, "Daniel's in a meeting. Can I take a message?" "It's urgent, Sarah. It's about the mortgage." A pause. "The mortgage? What about it?" "I'm on medical leave. Pneumonia. I can't work extra shifts for a while. I was hoping you and Daniel could manage the mortgage until I'm back on my feet." Silence stretched on the line, heavy and cold. "Sarah, did you hear me?" "I heard you," she snapped. "So you're saying you won't send the money this month?" Her words stung, framing my sacrifice as an obligation. "I can't, Sarah. I'm sick." "We're counting on that money, Elizabeth," she cut in. "We've booked a ski trip to Vermont for Christmas break." A chill ran through me. They had funds for a vacation but not their mortgage? "I've paid your mortgage for 3 years," I said quietly. "I think you can handle 1 month while I recover from pneumonia." Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Right, because that makes up for everything Daniel did for you after James died." I froze. "What?" "He told me how you leaned on him after James's death," she said, her tone patronizing. "How he stayed local for college because you couldn't cope alone." Her words were a lie, twisting my sacrifices. I'd worked grueling shifts to keep Daniel in college, urged him to chase his dreams. "That's not true, Sarah." Look, she said, her patience thin. We know you've helped because you wanted to be part of our lives. That's fine, but don't use your health as leverage. Speechless, I managed, I'll talk to Daniel tonight. Please have him call me. But Daniel didn't call that night or the next. When he finally did, 3 days later, his tone was rushed, defensive. Mom, Sarah told me about your call. I'm sorry you're sick, but we need that payment. We're hosting a pre-Christmas dinner for Sarah's colleagues, and we've ordered new dining furniture. Daniel, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I've paid your mortgage for 3 years. Extra shifts, skipped meals, neglected home repairs. I'm asking for a brief pause while I recover from a serious illness. Silence. Then, so you're keeping track? I thought you helped because you wanted to, not for something in return. His words cut deep. How had my son become someone who could speak to me this way? I don't expect anything but respect, I said, my voice breaking. And maybe some concern for my health. Of course I'm concerned, he said, unconvincingly. It's just bad timing. The holidays, our obligations. Obligations more important than your mother's health? I asked. He sighed, the sound crackling. Let's not be dramatic, Mom. Maybe we can send half this month. Half. After everything. Don't bother, I said, a calm resolve settling over me. I'll figure it out. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet house, seeing clearly for the first time. I poured everything into a son who saw my sacrifices as duties, drained my savings for people who prioritized ski trips over my well-being. Something had to change, starting with me. The next day, though still weak, I made 2 calls. First, to my bank, stopping the automatic transfer to Daniel and Sarah's account. Second, to my old friend Clara Evans, a retired teacher who'd long urged me to join her community center book club. Elizabeth Harper, Clara said warmly. What's this about? Is that book club offer still open? I asked, surprised by the lightness in my voice. Always. Thursdays at the library. Aren't you usually working? Not anymore, I said. I'm making changes. Over the next 2 weeks, as I recovered, Daniel's texts and calls grew frantic, each more urgent than the last. Daniel's urgent texts piled up. Where's the mortgage payment? Did you forget? Is there a bank issue? But I ignored them, focusing instead on my recovery and reevaluating my life. I dove into novels that had gathered dust on my shelves for years, savored tea with Clara Evans, and reconnected with my sister, Margaret, in Ohio, after months of silence due to my grueling work schedule. The day before Thanksgiving, Daniel appeared at my Cedar Lane home, disheveled. His usually tidy hair unkempt, dark circles framing his eyes. Mom, he said, barely crossing the threshold. There's a mix-up with the mortgage. The bank says the transfer was canceled. I let him in, noting how he avoided my gaze, never asking about my health or commenting on my visible frailty from pneumonia. It wasn't a mistake, Daniel, I said calmly, sitting in my living room. I canceled the transfer intentionally. He stared, bewildered. What? Why? Because I can't keep paying your mortgage. I'm prioritizing my health and my future. His face reddened with anger. You can't just decide that without warning. We have commitments tied to that money. Like your ski trip? I asked softly. He flinched, shame flickering before he rallied. That's unfair. We work hard. We deserve a break. And I deserve to retire someday, I countered. I deserve to live without exhausting myself. I deserve respect from my son and daughter-in-law. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. This isn't like you, Mom. You've always supported me. And I always will, emotionally. But financially, you and Sarah must stand on your own now. He stood abruptly. Fine, we'll manage, but don't expect us to rearrange our lives to include you when you're being this selfish. Selfish. The word lingered, sharp and heavy. Thanksgiving is tomorrow, I said, shifting the topic. Will I see you and Sarah? He shook his head, avoiding my eyes. We're going to the Colemans. Sarah's mom is expecting us. And Christmas? His voice took a rehearsed tone. Sarah's parents are hosting. It's mostly their crowd, family friends. Sarah thinks, we both think, it might be awkward for you. There it was, after years of sacrifices, I was excluded from my son's Christmas table. Awkward, I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. It's not personal, Daniel said, edging toward the door. You probably wouldn't enjoy it, but it was personal, deeply, painfully so. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Enjoy your holiday. After he left, I stood in my doorway, staring at the empty street where his car had been. 34 years of motherhood, always putting him first, had led to this. A place where I was selfish for refusing to work myself to death. Unwelcome at Christmas because I didn't fit their new life. That evening, Sarah texted, "Daniel told me your decision, very disappointed. Thought you cared about our family. Guess we know where we stand." I didn't reply. Instead, I made a choice that would reshape everything. The next morning, rather than wallowing alone on Thanksgiving, I drove to the Willow Creek Community Center, where Clara had organized a holiday meal for seniors with nowhere else to go. I hadn't told her I'd come, and her face brightened when I walked in. "Elizabeth, I didn't expect you." "Change of plans," I said simply. She handed me an apron without pressing. "Well, we're thrilled you're here. The mashed potatoes need stirring." For the first time in years, I enjoyed a holiday meal free of tension, without navigating Sarah's judgments or her parents' expectations. The seniors' gratitude for the food, the company, the simple act of being remembered warmed me. Driving home, I felt a rare peace, and with it, clarity about my next steps. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I booked an appointment with David Larson, the lawyer who'd handled James's estate years ago. His office hadn't changed, bookshelves lining the walls, the faint scent of coffee, a quiet competence that had steadied me after James's death. "Elizabeth," David said warmly, rising to greet me. "It's been too long. How can I help?" I sat, smoothing my skirt nervously. "I need legal advice about a financial situation with my son." I detailed everything. 3 years of paying Daniel and Sarah's mortgage, the recent clash over my illness, their exclusion of me from the holidays. David took notes, occasionally seeking clarification. When I finished, he leaned back, tapping his pen against his legal pad. "Let me get this straight. You've made direct payments to their mortgage lender without a formal loan agreement?" "Correct," I said. "Just a verbal promise they'd repay me when they were stable." "How much have you paid over 3 years?" I'd calculated it the night before. $126,000. David's eyebrows rose. "That's significant, Elizabeth. And you tapped your retirement savings for this?" I nodded, a flush of shame rising. "I also took extra shifts, but it wasn't enough. I've nearly drained my non-pension savings." He leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "Legally, without a written agreement, this could be seen as a gift, not a loan. However, we could argue an implied contract based on the payment pattern and verbal understanding. What are my options?" I asked David Larson, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "You could sue Daniel for repayment, but it's a costly, drawn-out process and could irreparably damage your relationship with him." He paused, gauging my reaction. "Or you can continue as you've started, stop the payments, and let them face the consequences." The idea of suing my son twisted my stomach. "I don't want to take Daniel to court. I just want to safeguard what's left for my future." David nodded, empathy in his eyes. "Then document everything. Every payment, every text, every email about the arrangement. Keep it in case they make claims against you later." "Do you think they would?" I asked, dreading the answer. "I hope not," he said carefully. "But money can bring out the worst, even in family." He hesitated, then added, "One more thing, Elizabeth. If your name is on any of their loan documents and they default, it could impact you." My heart lurched. My name isn't on their mortgage, but I co-signed a home equity line of credit last year. Sarah said it was for home improvements. David's face grew grim. "How much was the line?" $50,000, I said softly. He sighed. "Check that account's status immediately. If they've drawn on it, consider paying it off to protect your credit and financial security." I left David's office with a plan, but a heavy heart. My years of giving everything to Daniel had left me vulnerable, and now I had to protect myself. At the bank, after confirming my identity as a co-signer, the representative pulled up the home equity line of credit. "The balance is $48,622, she said, showing me the screen. My throat tightened. They'd nearly maxed it out. "When was the last transaction?" I asked. She clicked through. "A $12,000 withdrawal on November 15th. just before their ski trip and my exclusion from their Christmas. I want to pay off the balance and close the account, I said, my voice firm despite the ache. Her eyes widened. The full amount? That's significant. I understand. I'll transfer it from my retirement account. The process took 2 hours, including the early withdrawal penalties, which stung. But David's warning echoed. Staying financially tied to Daniel and Sarah could cost me more. Driving home, a strange calm settled over me. I'd just sacrificed nearly all my remaining retirement savings to shield myself from my son's choices. The pain was so deep it numbed me. At home, I ignored 3 missed calls from Daniel and a text. Need to discuss mortgage ASAP. Call me. I set my phone aside, needing space to process. That evening, over tea at my kitchen table, I assessed my finances. After paying off the credit line, I had $20,000 left in savings, barely a year's worth of frugal living if I stopped working. My hospital pension would kick in at 65, modest but steady. My home's equity was substantial, but I'd hoped to leave it to Daniel someday. The irony stung. I'd saved for his future, yet now I faced selling my home to secure my own. My phone rang again. Daniel. I answered. Mom, finally, he said, irritation sharp in his voice. I've been trying to reach you all day. I had appointments, I replied evenly. We need to talk about the mortgage. The payment was due yesterday, and we got a late notice. Yes, I imagine you did, I said, calm but resolute. He paused, thrown by my tone. So, are you sending it or not? If this hits our credit report. I won't be making more payments, Daniel, I interrupted. As I said last week, I'm focusing on my financial security now. He stopped, then shifted to a familiar wheedling tone from his teenage years when he begged for pricey gadgets. I know you're upset about Christmas, but it's Sarah's family's tradition. We're not excluding you on purpose. Except you are, I said quietly. Sarah told me I wouldn't fit in with her parents' crowd. She didn't mean it like that, Daniel protested weakly. Her family's just different, more formal. More formal than the woman who raised you? I asked, my voice sharp with hurt. The woman who worked 60-hour weeks to fund your college, who paid your mortgage for 3 years? That woman isn't formal enough for your wife's Christmas table? Silence hung heavy on the line. He had no answer. Daniel, I continued, softening. I love you. You're my son, and that will never change. But this relationship is unhealthy. You and Sarah must take responsibility for your finances, and I need to prepare for my retirement. The mortgage is your responsibility, not mine. I've made sacrifices you don't even know about to protect myself financially. I paid off the home equity line of credit today. You what? His voice spiked with panic. Why would you do that? Because I co-signed it, Daniel. I couldn't risk my credit if you and Sarah defaulted. We weren't going to default, he snapped. We just needed flexibility until after the holidays. I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. Daniel, you withdrew $12,000 from that credit line 2 weeks ago. Was that for your ski trip or the new dining furniture? He didn't answer immediately, and when he did, his tone was defensive. We needed that furniture for entertaining. Sarah's boss is coming to dinner next month. It's critical for her career. More critical than your mother's financial security? More than treating me with basic respect? That's not fair, he shot back. You're twisting everything. We appreciate what you've done, but you can't hold it over us forever. What you've done, the phrase trivialized years of sacrifice, drained savings, and compromised health. I'm not holding anything over you, I said firmly. I'm stating facts. I've supported you well into adulthood, and now I'm stepping back. Your finances are your responsibility. So you're just cutting us off? I'm prioritizing my needs after decades of putting yours first. It's called setting boundaries, Daniel. The call ended soon after, with Daniel still upset, but sensing my resolve. I sat in my kitchen, staring at a calendar where I'd circled Christmas in red, once anticipating a holiday with my son and his wife. The next morning, Sarah texted, Daniel told me you paid off the credit line without consulting us. Manipulative and controlling. We had plans for that money. This is why we need space from you. I read it twice, stunned by her audacity, framing my protection of my credit as manipulation. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to Mercy General to discuss my return with Dr. William Bennett. Though my pneumonia had improved, fatigue lingered, and I knew I couldn't resume overnight shifts. Dr. Bennett welcomed me into his office, concern in his eyes. "Elizabeth, you're looking better, but not fully recovered. Are you sure you're ready?" "Not for my old schedule," I admitted. "Can we discuss reduced hours?" He nodded. "We can shift you to administrative work, 3 days a week, daytime hours. The pay's lower, but—" "Perfect," I interrupted. "I'm planning for retirement." "May I speak frankly?" he asked, leaning forward. "Of course. I've worried about you, Elizabeth. The hours you've worked aren't sustainable, especially at your age." And he hesitated. "I've noticed Daniel rarely visits, even when you've worked holidays." I flushed, embarrassed that my situation was so apparent. "He has his own life," I said, the words hollow. Dr. Bennett's gaze softened. "In 15 years, I've never seen someone give so much and ask for so little." I didn't know how to respond, caught between his kindness and the sting of his observation. "The administrative role starts next week," he continued. "Rest until then, and Elizabeth, the hospital's Christmas party is on the 23rd. You've always worked that night, but I hope you'll join us this year." His invitation brought tears to my eyes. "I'd like that," I said. The next 2 weeks were calm. The administrative work at Mercy General was less taxing, even engaging. I joined Clara's book club and volunteered at the community center, helping with a clothing drive. Daniel called twice about the mortgage, each talk more strained. Their financial reality was sinking in, but neither he nor Sarah seemed ready to adjust their lifestyle. "We might have to sell the house," he said in our last call, his voice a mix of anger and despair. "That might be wise," I replied calmly. "Something more affordable could work." "This is our home," he protested. I bit back the urge to point out that their obsession with appearances had landed them in this mess. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady, "there are worse things than downsizing to a home you can afford." "Easy for you to say," he muttered. "You've lived in the same house for 30 years. "Yes," I replied, "a house your father and I could afford with careful budgeting and modest expectations." The call ended with him snapping, "We'll figure it out ourselves." As if that wasn't exactly what I'd been urging. Silence followed for days, giving me space to heal, physically and emotionally. The distance clarified the truth. I'd enabled Daniel and Sarah's financial recklessness for years, only to be pushed out of their lives except when they needed money. A week before Christmas, my doorbell rang in the early evening. I wasn't expecting visitors. Opening the door, I found Charles Coleman, Sarah's father, standing on my porch. "Mr. Coleman," I said, startled. In all the years Daniel had been married to Sarah, Charles had barely spoken to me. "Mrs. Harper," he said stiffly, "may I come in? We need to discuss something." I stepped aside, noting his tailored cashmere coat and leather gloves as he entered my modest living room. "Tea or coffee?" I offered, leaning on hospitality despite my unease. "No, thank you. This won't take long." He stood, surveying my worn furniture with the same subtle disdain Sarah had shown years ago. "What can I do for you, Mr. Coleman?" He clasped his hands behind his back, his posture like a principal addressing a wayward student. "I understand you stopped supporting Daniel and Sarah's household." His words framed my decision as neglect, not self-preservation. "And focusing on my financial security," I corrected calmly. "Daniel and Sarah are capable adults with jobs. They can manage their own finances." His lips tightened. "Be that as it may, your decision has caused them significant hardship, especially with the holidays and social commitments looming." I waited, sensing his true purpose. "Sarah's quite upset," he continued. "You not only stopped the mortgage payments, but also paid off and closed a credit line they relied on." "A credit line I co-signed," I pointed out. "I was protecting myself from liability." He waved a hand dismissively. "Legally, you may be within your rights, but surely you see the social position this puts them in. They've made plans, committed to hosting events. Plans that assumed I'd work 60-hour weeks at 62 to fund their lifestyle?" I asked, keeping my tone even despite rising indignation. Charles shifted, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. No one expected you to work yourself sick, Mrs. Harper. But a gradual transition with notice would have been considerate. I gave notice when I was diagnosed with pneumonia, I said. I told them I couldn't keep up the extra shifts. They chose a ski vacation and new furniture over their mortgage. He frowned. That's Sarah's version. It's the truth, I interrupted, my firmness surprising us both. I have bank statements and texts to prove it. Charles cleared his throat, unaccustomed to pushback. Regardless, this situation stresses my daughter, which affects my wife and me. We're hosting Christmas with prominent families. The last thing we need is Daniel and Sarah distracted by financial woes. There it was. Their real concern wasn't my son's stability, but their holiday image. What are you asking, Mr. Coleman? I said, already knowing. A compromise, he replied, his tone turning businesslike. Resume the mortgage payments temporarily, just through the new year, to give them time to adjust, perhaps downsize as you suggested. He pulled out a checkbook. I'm prepared to compensate you for this inconvenience. The insult that my sacrifices were a mere inconvenience to their social calendar left me momentarily speechless. You want to pay me to keep funding my son's mortgage? I clarified, incredulous. Consider it a consulting fee, he said smoothly, uncapping a sleek pen. You resume payments to maintain their appearances through the holidays, and I compensate you. A simple business arrangement. I stared, stunned. This man who'd never invited me to his home was offering to bribe me to enable my son's dependence. Mr. Coleman, I said, my voice quiet but resolute. I'm not interested in being paid to support my son. If you're worried about Daniel and Sarah's finances, help them directly. He blinked, as if the idea of aiding his own daughter was foreign. That's not how our family operates. We value financial independence. The irony nearly made me laugh. Independence funded by a 62-year-old nurse's overtime. His expression hardened. I see. Sarah was right about your attitude. This is why we felt you wouldn't fit at our Christmas gathering. Because I expect adults to pay their own bills? I asked. Because you resent Sarah's lifestyle choices. I took a deep breath, holding my temper. I don't resent Sarah or her choices. I simply can't subsidize them at the expense of my health and security. He tucked his checkbook away with a sharp motion. Very well. I'll tell Daniel and Sarah to make other arrangements. That would be best, I agreed. As he moved toward the door, he turned back, his eyes calculating. You know Elizabeth, Charles Coleman said, his tone patronizing. May I call you Elizabeth? Many parents would be grateful their child married into a family of our stature. The connections alone are invaluable. I held his gaze. Many parents would expect their daughter-in-law's family to show basic courtesy and respect, regardless of stature. His lips tightened, but he offered no reply, donning his cashmere coat and gloves. Merry Christmas, Mr. Coleman, I said, opening the door. He nodded curtly and left without reciprocating. I leaned against the closed door, my heart pounding as if I'd sprinted a mile. The encounter felt unreal. From Charles's unexpected visit to his audacious attempt to bribe me into funding Daniel and Sarah's lifestyle. Worse was the realization that they all saw me as a utility, an inconvenience when I didn't comply, a social misfit to be sidelined, not a person with needs, feelings, or dignity. In the kitchen, I put the kettle on, craving tea's comfort. Glancing at the calendar, I saw Christmas Day circled in red, now a reminder of solitude, not family. Doubt crept in. Had I been too harsh? Should I have eased them into independence more gradually? Was I punishing them for excluding me? The kettle's whistle snapped me out of it. As I steeped my tea, I grounded myself in reality. I'd worked myself into pneumonia to sustain their lifestyle, drained my savings, jeopardized my retirement. They'd explicitly told me I didn't fit at their Christmas table. No, I wasn't punishing them. I was demanding the respect I deserved, setting boundaries long overdue. The phone rang, Daniel's name on the caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. Mom, he began, voice taut with anger. Did you just refuse money from Charles Coleman? So Charles had reported our talk immediately. I refused to be paid to resume your mortgage payments, yes. Do you know how humiliating that was for us? For Sarah's father to have to come to you like that. I closed my eyes, stunned that my son found Charles's bribe humiliating, not the fact that his father-in-law felt compelled to intervene. Daniel, I said quietly, if you're embarrassed, It should be that your father-in-law thought he needed to meddle in your finances, not that I refused to be bought. He was trying to help, Daniel protested, and you threw it in his face. Do you know what this does to Sarah's relationship with her parents? They're furious. They're furious I won't work myself sick to pay your bills, I clarified. That seems like misplaced anger, don't you think? This isn't just about money anymore, he said, his voice trembling. You're deliberately ruining our holidays, or standing with Sarah's family, everything. His accusation cut deep. He genuinely believed my self-preservation was an attack. Daniel, I love you, I said carefully, but imagine if our roles were reversed. If I expected you to work extra hours to pay my bills, then excluded you from family gatherings because you didn't fit in. That's different, he muttered. Parents are supposed to help their kids. Adult children are supposed to be independent, I countered gently, and treat their parents with respect, not as ATMs. Silence stretched. Then Daniel's voice turned cold, a tone I'd never heard from him. Fine, keep your money. Stay home alone for Christmas. I hope it's worth it. The line went dead. I sat at my kitchen table, tea cooling, and let the tears fall. Not just for Daniel's rejection, but for the years I'd believed my sacrifices would earn appreciation. For the slow drift of our relationship as he and Sarah chased status over connection. For the mother I'd been who hadn't taught her son gratitude. And next morning, my eyes were swollen, but my mind clear. I couldn't control Daniel or Sarah's choices, only my own. I called Clara Evans. Is your Christmas dinner offer still open? Of course, she exclaimed. We'd love to have you. Just bring your wonderful self. Then, I confirmed with Dr. Bennett's office that I'd attend the hospital's Christmas party on the 23rd. His secretary sounded delighted. Dr. Bennett specifically asked me to ensure you'd come. Finally, I called my sister Margaret in Ohio, our bond strained by distance and my old work schedule. Elizabeth, she said warmly, what a lovely surprise. Margaret and I spoke for nearly an hour, catching up on life's twists and turns. When I shared the broad strokes of my rift with Daniel and Sarah, she listened without judgment. It sounds like you're finally putting yourself first, she said warmly. It's about time, if you asked me. I never thought it would come to this, I admitted. Being excluded from Christmas, Daniel angry because I won't pay his bills. Sometimes the hardest part of parenting is letting our kids face their own consequences, Margaret said wisely. You taught Daniel to walk by letting go of his hands, right? This is just the grown-up version. Her words soothed me, framing my choice as growth, not abandonment. By the way, Margaret added, I'm visiting Aunt Clara in Pittsburgh after New Year's. It's not far from Willow Creek. Maybe I could stay a few days with you? The thought of reconnecting with family who valued me lifted my heart. I'd love that, I said sincerely. After hanging up, I sat in my living room, reflecting on my changes. For the first time in years, I wasn't shaping my life around Daniel's needs. I was making plans for myself, connecting with people who reciprocated my care, setting boundaries to protect my well-being. It wasn't the future I'd imagined, always close with Daniel, but it was one I could embrace with dignity. I erased the red circle around Christmas Day on my calendar, replacing it with dinner at Clara's 2 p.m. Not the family holiday I'd hoped for, but the start of a tradition built on mutual respect, not obligation. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. More tense conversations and painful realizations about my changed relationship with Daniel loomed. But I was done buying his presence at the cost of my health and security. The hospital Christmas party on the 23rd surprised me with its elegance. The conference room, usually stark, sparkled as a winter wonderland. Twinkling lights, silver and blue decor, tables adorned with white roses and pine. A string quartet played softly, and servers offered appetizers and champagne. I'd chosen a navy dress from a long-ago fundraiser with Jane's, updated with a silver scarf to mask its dated neckline. Feeling out of place near the entrance, I was relieved when Dr. William Bennett approached. Elizabeth, he said warmly, you look wonderful. I'm so glad you came. Thank you, William, I replied, using his first name as he'd encouraged outside work. This is beautiful. He offered his arm. Let me introduce you to some folks. Most of the admin staff only know you by reputation. Reputation? I raised an eyebrow. As the cardiac unit's most skilled nurse, he said with a smile, and the only one who can read my handwriting. For the next hour, William guided me through the crowd, introducing me to board members, administrators, and doctors. Many knew me by name, citing moments my work had stood out. Dr. Patel still talks about how you caught a rare complication in that transplant patient last year, the chief of surgery said. Likely saved their life. I blushed, unused to such praise, just doing my job. With exceptional skill, William added firmly. As the evening unfolded, I relaxed, savoring the respite from my worries. William was attentive, ensuring my glass stayed filled and finding us a table for dinner. You seem different tonight, he observed over our meal. How so? More present, he said thoughtfully. At past events, you always seemed distracted, like you were counting the minutes until you could leave for your responsibilities. His accuracy stung. I'd always treated work events as duties, my mind on Daniel's needs. I suppose I am more present, I admitted. I've been focusing on myself lately. It suits you, he said simply. After dessert, the CEO gave a speech thanking us for our dedication. He announced small gifts for all, arranged alphabetically at the exit. William and I approached the table, where I found a silver-wrapped package with my name. Inside was a leather-bound journal, my initials embossed, and a spa gift card. Is this for everyone? I asked, touched by the personalization. William smiled. The spa cards are standard. The journals were my idea. But I took special care with yours. Thank you, I said moved. You remembered I used to journal from that night shift years ago. His thoughtfulness warmed me. As the party ended, he offered to walk me to my car. The December night was crisp, stars bright despite the city glow. I've been meaning to ask you something, he said as we crossed the parking lot. There's a chamber music concert at the university next weekend, Dr. William Bennett said as we reached my car. Would you be interested in joining me? I stopped, caught off guard. Are you asking me on a date, William? He looked slightly sheepish but held my gaze. I suppose I am. Is that inappropriate? We've worked together for years, but it's not inappropriate, I interrupted gently. Just unexpected. He smiled, a hint of relief in his eyes. I've always admired you, Elizabeth. Your skill, your compassion, your quiet strength. I should have asked sooner, but you always seemed unavailable, not just in time, but emotionally. His words hit home. I'd built my life around Daniel's needs, leaving little room for friendships, let alone romance. How many moments of joy had I missed in my devotion to him? The concert sounds lovely, I said. I'd be happy to join you. His smile brightened, shedding years from his face. Wonderful. I'll pick you up at 7. If that works. We finalized details, and as he opened my car door, he hesitated, then leaned in, brushing a gentle kiss on my cheek. Merry Christmas, Elizabeth. Merry Christmas, William, I replied, my cheek tingling as I drove home, a forgotten flutter of excitement stirring. Possibility. At 62, when I'd thought that chapter closed. At home, I noticed lights glowing at my neighbor's house across Cedar Lane. Susan Mitchell had lived there as long as I had, but our interactions rarely went beyond waves or brief chats about the weather. Like so many potential friendships, I'd let time slip away consumed by responsibilities. On impulse, I crossed the street and knocked. Susan opened the door, surprise on her face. Elizabeth, is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured her. Your Christmas lights always look so beautiful. I've been meaning to ask if you'd help me put some up on my house, if you have time. Her face lit up. I'd love to. My husband Tom used to handle our decorations, but after he passed, I taught myself. It's become a passion. She glanced at her watch. It's not too late to plan tonight. I've got hot chocolate. An hour later, we sat at her kitchen table, empty mugs beside a sketch of how we'd decorate my house the next weekend. What began as talk as lights grew into shared stories of our late husbands, our lives in Willow Creek, our love for gardening. We should start a garden club in spring, Susan suggested eagerly. I know at least 4 neighbors who'd join. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. I've wanted to redo my backyard for years, but never found time. Susan nodded. Life slips by when we're caught up in other things. After Tom died, I spent years just existing. Then I started saying yes to the community choir, library volunteering, even online dating, though that was a fiasco. She laughed, shaking her head. Online dating? I asked, surprised. Oh yes, she said. Mostly disasters, but a few nice dinners with interesting men. No sparks, but it got me out. She studied me. You never thought about dating again? I shook my head. Between work and family, it wasn't an option. but I just agreed to a concert next weekend with a colleague, a male colleague. Susan clapped, delighted. Elizabeth Harper, is this a date? I think so, I admitted, blushing. You must tell me everything after, and if you need accessories or an outfit opinion, I'm right here. Walking home, I marveled at how a simple gesture had sparked a budding friendship, all because I'd reached out, said yes, instead of retreating to worry about Daniel's problems. The next morning, I woke feeling lighter than I had in years. I made coffee and sat on my back porch despite the December chill, watching chickadees dart to the feeder I kept. The simple joy, the warm mug, the flitting birds, the pale winter sun, filled me with a contentment tied to no one's approval but my own. My phone chimed with a text from Clara Evans confirming Christmas dinner at her home. I replied with gratitude and set the phone aside, determined not to let potential messages from Daniel or Sarah disrupt my serene morning. Later, I visited a local nursery to buy a small living Christmas tree for my front window. In past years, I'd either spent holidays with Daniel and Sarah or skipped decorations entirely when working. This year would be different. As I paid, a familiar voice called, "Mrs. Harper!" I turned to see Kevin Lynn, Daniel's childhood friend, approaching with a warm smile. "It's been ages," he gave me a friendly hug. "How are you?" "I'm well, Kevin. Thank you. And you? Daniel said you're with a software company now." "That's right," he said. "Back visiting my parents for the holidays." He glanced at my tree. "Getting festive?" "Trying to," I smiled. "Still in touch with Daniel?" A shadow crossed his face. "Not as much as I'd like. We grab lunch sometimes, but..." He hesitated. "But," I prompted gently. He sighed. "Things changed after he married Sarah. Our friendship's not the same. It's hard when it feels like your value is tied to what you can offer socially or professionally. I'm not in Sarah's circles, and my small company doesn't have the networking clout Daniel's chasing." I nodded, a familiar ache rising. I know that feeling all too well. Kevin's expression turned sympathetic. "I heard you're not joining them for Christmas." "News travels fast," I said, wondering what Daniel had shared. "He mentioned it when I texted about meeting up, said you had other plans." Kevin paused, then added quietly, "He also said you've stopped helping financially." Anger flickered, Daniel discussing our private matters, but I stayed calm. "I've had to focus on my own financial security." "Good for you," Kevin said firmly. "Daniel was my best friend growing up, and I'll always care about him, but their lifestyle, always stretching beyond their means, chasing status, it's unsustainable. It's changed him." His words, from someone who'd known Daniel since childhood, were both validating and painful. "I hope he realizes that before it's too late," I said softly. "Me too." Kevin helped carry my tree to my car. "If you need help setting this up, I'd be happy to stop by. Mom's got your address." "That's kind of you," I said, touched. "I should manage, but I appreciate it." As we parted, he gave me another hug. "Daniel's lucky to have you, Mrs. Harper. Some of us see that, even if he's forgotten, temporarily." Driving home, Kevin's words echoed, a reminder that not everyone in Daniel's life saw me as he and Sarah did, a resource, an obligation, an embarrassment. Some still valued the love I'd given. The next day, with Susan Mitchell's help, I decorated my house for the first time in years. Simple white lights along the roof and windows, a wreath on the door, the tree glowing in the window. It felt festive, welcoming. "We need hot chocolate to celebrate," Susan declared. "And you owe me details about this doctor taking you to the concert." I laughed, feeling a youthful thrill. "Not much to tell yet. William's the chief of medicine at Mercy General. We've worked together for years." "He's only asking you out now?" Susan teased. "Men can be so slow." "Is he handsome?" "Distinguished," I said thoughtfully. "Kind eyes, warm smile, widowed, no children." "A doctor with kind eyes and no kids? Promising," she said, wiggling her eyebrows, making me laugh again. "I haven't dated since before James," I admitted. "I'm not sure I remember how." "Just be yourself," Susan advised, patting my hand. "He's probably as nervous as you." Concert day arrived and I fussed over my appearance, trying 3 outfits before choosing a deep burgundy dress, unworn since I bought it years ago for a special occasion that never came. I styled my hair carefully, applied makeup, a rarity, and felt a nervous flutter when William arrived at 7. "You look beautiful, Elizabeth," he said, his charcoal suit and tie complementing my dress perfectly. The concert, in the university's intimate recital hall, featured a string quartet playing Schubert and Dvorak, the music weaving emotional depth through the space. I was fully present, free of worries about Daniel or finances, immersed in the moment's beauty. During intermission, we strolled through the adjacent art gallery. "Enjoying the performance?" William asked. "Very much," I said, sincerely. I haven't attended a live concert in ages, I confessed at the Italian restaurant William had chosen for dinner after the chamber music performance. He smiled. "I had ulterior motives. This quartet has a series of concerts this year, and I hope to find someone to attend them all with me." A hint of an ongoing connection sent a warm thrill through me. "I might be persuaded," I said, returning his smile. Over pasta and wine, our conversation flowed effortlessly. Music, books, hospital politics, travel dreams. "I've always wanted to see the Greek islands," I admitted. "James and I planned it for our 30th anniversary, but he fell ill." William nodded. "Emily and I planned Ireland. After she passed, I couldn't go alone. But lately, I've been thinking it's time." "What changed?" I asked. He paused thoughtfully. I realized staying stuck wasn't honoring her memory. It was freezing it, defining myself only as a widower, not someone who can still find joy. He met my eyes. "What about you, Elizabeth? You mentioned changes at the Christmas party." I hesitated, unsure how much to share on a first date, but his open gaze invited trust. "I've been reassessing priorities. For years, I put Daniel's needs above my own, often at great cost. Recently, I realized that wasn't healthy for either of us." He nodded, encouraging but not prying. "I worked myself into pneumonia, supporting Daniel and Sarah financially," I continued. "When I got sick and asked for a break, their reaction showed me our relationship was unbalanced." "That must hurt," William said softly. "It does. Still does. Accepting that our closeness depended on my financial support was the hardest part. Setting boundaries changed everything." "Setting boundaries with adult children is tough," he observed, "especially after years of caregiving. Does it make you a bad mother?" The question slipped out, raw and unguarded. "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "You're modeling healthy self-care, even if Daniel doesn't see it yet." His words eased a knot in my chest. Dinner lightened with William's hospital anecdotes, making me laugh more than I had in months. When he drove me home, he walked me to my door. "I had a wonderful time, Elizabeth," he said, his subtle cologne lingering. "So did I. I'd like to see you again. Dinner next weekend, unless that's too soon?" "Not too soon," I assured him. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull back. I didn't, and his gentle kiss sent a shiver of delight through me. "Good night, Elizabeth." "Good night, William." Inside, my house glowed with Susan's Christmas lights, and I realized this was my life, expanding beyond the confines I'd accepted for so long. The next morning, a call from Sarah startled me. She rarely contacted me directly. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." "All right," I replied cautiously. "Not over the phone. Can we meet for coffee today?" Her urgency, devoid of calculation, piqued my curiosity. "The cafe on Main Street, noon?" "Perfect, thank you." She hung up abruptly. I spent the morning torn between curiosity and apprehension. Sarah and I had never been close. She'd always kept me at arm's length, polite but distant, like a slightly embarrassing relative. At the bustling cafe, filled with holiday shoppers, Sarah sat at a corner table, her untouched coffee betraying her tension. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her mouth tight. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat. "Can I get you something?" "I'll grab it in a moment." "Sarah, what's going on? You sounded upset." She glanced around, then leaned forward. "Daniel doesn't know I'm here, and I'd prefer he didn't." My concern deepened. "Is everything okay between you two?" "No," she said bluntly. "Nothing's okay. That's why I'm here." She took a deep breath. "Elizabeth, I need to ask something, and I need your honesty, even if it's hard." I nodded. "I'll try." "Did you know about the gambling?" The question stunned me. "Gambling? What gambling?" She studied me, then softened, as if relieved. "You really didn't know. I worried you'd been covering for him." "Sarah, I have no idea what you mean. Is Daniel gambling?" She closed her eyes briefly, then met my gaze with resolve. Yes, I found out 2 years ago when our credit card was declined at a restaurant. There were dozens of transactions, online poker, sports betting. My mind reeled. Did you confront him? Of course. He swore it was a hobby that got out of hand. Promised to stop. I believed him. She gave a bitter laugh. I was naive. 8 months ago, I saw the same patterns again. Investments? I echoed, recalling Daniel's vague mentions of financial strategies and opportunities. Sarah nodded grimly. Non-existent. Just lies to hide his gambling. She sipped her cooling coffee, her hands unsteady. After our second confrontation, he got sneakier, used accounts I couldn't access, took cash advances, who knows what else. And the mortgage payments I made? The home equity line, I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Some went to expenses, Sarah admitted, avoiding my eyes. But a lot, especially the big withdrawals, she trailed off. He gambled with money I worked extra shifts for. I finished, the betrayal hitting like a punch. Yes, Sarah whispered. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth. I should have told you sooner. I was too embarrassed, too proud, too scared of what the truth would do to our life, our status. I leaned back, grappling with the deception scale. The late nights Daniel claimed were work, the urgent pleas for money, the vague excuses about where it went. It all clicked into a devastating pattern. How bad is it? I asked. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. Bad. The mortgage is 4 months behind, not just one. We're facing foreclosure. He took out another credit line behind my back after you paid off the first. Credit cards are maxed. My car's at risk of repossession. Does he admit he has a problem? She shook her head. He insists he'll win it back, that it's a rough patch. Classic addict talk. I've been reading about it. What about your parents? Surely they'd help if they knew. Her face hardened. They can't know. My father would disown me. His own father was a compulsive gambler who lost their family business. If he knew I married someone like that. She shuddered. The pieces fell into place. Her obsession with appearances, the lavish spending despite financial strain. So that's why you've kept up this lifestyle, I said. Sarah stared at her hands. I know how it looks. Buying furniture, taking vacations while you paid our mortgage. The furniture was on credit. I didn't realize how bad things were until recently. The ski trip was mostly my parents' Christmas gift. I couldn't refuse without questions. I processed her words, my resentment softening. Sarah, too, was caught in Daniel's web, just differently. Why tell me now? I'm at my breaking point, she said, her voice trembling. Last night, Daniel came home at 3 a.m., admitted he lost $5,000 at a casino outside town. Money we don't have. She took a shaky breath. I told him to get help, Gamblers Anonymous, therapy, something. He refused, said I was overreacting, that every successful man has setbacks, that you'd bail us out again. The entitlement in his words ignited my anger. When I said you'd stopped helping, he got ugly, said things I never thought I'd hear. Her voice dropped. He implied if I were a better wife, more like my family's social circle, he wouldn't need to gamble. My fury flared at Daniel's manipulation. That's textbook addict behavior, blaming others. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know, but it still hurts. She looked at me, raw and vulnerable. Elizabeth, I'm scared. Not just of financial ruin, but of who Daniel's becoming. The lies, the anger. It's like living with a stranger in my husband's skin. In that moment, Sarah's polished facade crumbled, revealing a frightened woman facing the collapse of her marriage, security, and dreams. Have you considered separation? I asked gently. Every day this week, she admitted. But I'm terrified of telling my parents the social fallout, starting over at 32 with debt that's not even mine. I saw her not as the status-conscious daughter-in-law, but as someone trapped, just as I'd been by my own sacrifices. I reached across the cafe table, taking Sarah's hand, surprising us both. Sarah, I can't tell you what to do, but I've learned it's never too late to prioritize your well-being, to set boundaries, to choose a healthier path, even if it's daunting. She squeezed my hand, gratitude in her eyes. That's why I wanted to talk. You've seemed stronger lately, more resolute. I admire how you've held your ground despite the pressure from Daniel, me, and my parents. It hasn't been easy, I admitted, but it's been necessary. I need that courage, Sarah said softly. I can't keep living like this. The lies, the anxiety, always on edge. She met my gaze, vulnerable. Elizabeth, I'm sorry for how I've treated you. The dismissiveness, the exclusion, not seeing your sacrifices. I was so caught up in impressing my parents, keeping up appearances, that I lost sight of what matters. Her sincerity softened the knot of resentment I'd carried. Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. We sat quietly, the cafe's holiday buzz a backdrop to our shared pause. What now? I asked. Sarah straightened, resolve in her posture. I've booked a therapist who specializes in addiction. For me, not Daniel. I need to understand why I've enabled this, why I'd valued image over reality. I nodded. That's a brave step. And I'm meeting a financial advisor next week to assess our situation, explore options, she added. I've also started looking at small apartments in areas my parents wouldn't visit, just in case I need an exit. If you need help, I'm here, I offered, surprised by my own sincerity. Despite everything, Sarah was family, tied to me through Daniel, and her courage was unexpected. Thank you, she said, eyes glistening. That means more than you know. She glanced at her watch. I should go. Daniel will wonder where I am. As we stood, she hugged me impulsively. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth, for everything. I know, I said, returning the embrace. Whatever you decide, Sarah, choose what's right for you. Not your parents, not appearances, not even your marriage. You deserve a life free of fear. After she left, I stayed, ordering a coffee I barely wanted, needing time to process. Daniel's gambling addiction recast our past in a stark, troubling light. How long had it been going on? How much of my support had fueled his habit, not the stable future I'd envisioned? Could I support his recovery without financial entanglement? Was recovery possible if he denied his problem? These questions churned as I watched holiday shoppers pass the cafe windows. No easy answers existed, only the certainty of more difficult conversations. Yet amidst the turmoil, clarity emerged. My boundaries, my choice to prioritize myself, were more vital than I'd realized. Sometimes, stepping back wasn't abandonment, but the healthiest love, creating space for truth, for change. I left the cafe, the December air sharp against my skin, and headed home, ready for what lay ahead. Not just as Daniel's mother, William's potential partner, or Susan's friend, but as Elizabeth Harper, a woman reclaiming her life. Christmas Eve brought a light snow, turning Willow Creek into a postcard scene. I spent the morning baking ginger molasses cookies from my mother's recipe, their orange zest scent filling my kitchen with memories of simpler holidays, when Daniel was young, enchanted by small traditions. I wondered how he was spending his Christmas Eve. Had Sarah told him about our talk? Was he at the Coleman's lavish celebration, or lost to his addiction elsewhere? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Merry Christmas Eve, Elizabeth. Margaret's warm voice greeted. Just checking in. I'm doing well, I said, surprised to realize it was true. Despite Daniel's gambling and our strained bond, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I'm baking Mom's ginger cookies. I told Margaret over the phone. I can almost smell them, she sighed, nostalgic. Remember how she let us decorate them with that awful colored sugar that got everywhere? I laughed, the memory vivid. And Dad would pretend to be annoyed but eat the most. Good days, Margaret said softly. Any word from Daniel? I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Our recent closeness hadn't yet extended to sharing Daniel's gambling. It's complicated, I said. I've learned some troubling things about his situation. What kind? Her tone sharpened with concern. Taking a deep breath, I told her everything. Daniel's gambling, Sarah's secret cafe meeting, their financial ruin beyond what I'd known. Oh, Elizabeth, Margaret said, that's devastating. It is, I agreed. But it's also clarifying. My boundaries weren't just about my financial security. They may have forced this truth to surface. After hanging up, I packed the cookies and took a walk with Susan Mitchell to admire Willow Creek's holiday lights. The Jensens outdid themselves, she remarked, nodding at a house with a dazzling music-synced display. Their electric bill must be wild. It's beautiful, though, I said, smiling. So, Susan teased. Ready for your big Christmas Eve date? William had invited me to dinner at his home, a step beyond our public outings. I think so. I bought a new dress. Look at you, Elizabeth Harper, new dress, holiday romance. I barely recognize my workaholic neighbor. I laughed, her teasing ringing true. Since setting boundaries with Daniel, I'd rediscovered dormant parts of myself. Music, style, friendship, romance. William's a good man, I said. He makes me feel valued. William's Tudor-style home near Mercy General was warm and inviting. He greeted me in my new emerald dress with a smile that made the splurge worthwhile. You look stunning, Elizabeth. Dinner was elegant, candlelit with prime rib and paired wine. I haven't entertained in years, he confessed. I was nervous I'd forgotten how. It's perfect, I assured him. Over dessert, a bakery chocolate cake, he admitted. I've wanted to invite you for years. Years? I echoed, surprised. Why didn't you? He smiled ruefully. Professional boundaries, for one. Our roles at the hospital made me cautious, and you always seemed occupied emotionally. I nodded, understanding. I was trapped in caregiving, with no room for myself. What changed? He asked gently. Necessity, I said honestly. I worked myself into pneumonia, supporting Daniel and Sarah. When I got sick and asked for a break, their reaction showed I'd been enabling unhealthy patterns. Our goodnight kiss, less tentative, lingered warmly, promising more. Merry Christmas, Elizabeth, he whispered, hugging me. Merry Christmas, William. Inside, my house glowed with Susan's lights, my Christmas tree twinkling. William's gift, a Mary Oliver poetry volume, waited on my bedside table. Then my phone chimed. Sarah, can we talk tomorrow? Urgent. Daniel found out about our coffee meeting. Things escalated. I need advice. My heart sank. So much for a peaceful Christmas. I replied, of course. What time? Her response was instant. 8 a.m. at your house, before Daniel wakes. Christmas morning dawned crisp, snow glinting in the sun. Sarah arrived at 8 o'clock, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Thank you for seeing me, she said, stepping inside. Especially today. I led her to the kitchen, coffee ready. What's wrong? Your text sounded urgent. Daniel found out about our cafe meeting, she said, clutching her mug. Someone saw us and told him. When I admitted I'd shared his gambling, he got volatile. Volatile how? I asked, alarm rising. Did he hurt you? Not physically, she said quickly. He said awful things, Sarah continued, her voice trembling as she clutched her coffee mug. Called me ungrateful, disloyal, said I was just like you, trying to control him, make him look bad. He threatened to tell my parents everything if I didn't fix things with you. Fix things? I asked, my stomach tightening. Convince you to resume financial support? She said bitterly. He thinks if I apologize enough, you'll open your checkbook again. As if that would solve anything, she set her mug down, hands shaking. I told him I wouldn't, that even if you agreed, which I said was unlikely, it would only enable his addiction. That's when he lost it. Threw dishes, broke things. I waited until he left, packed a bag and stayed in a hotel last night. She looked at me, eyes pleading. I need a place to stay, just for a few days, until I can talk to my parents and figure out next steps. Hotels are expensive, and I need to be careful with money. The request stunned me. Sarah, who once deemed me unfit for her Christmas table, now seeking refuge in my home. The guest room's small, I said after a moment. Not as elegant as you're used to, but you're welcome to stay as long as you need. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, Elizabeth. I won't be in your way. I called Clara Evans to explain I'd need to reschedule our Christmas dinner. Nonsense, Clara insisted warmly. I'll bring dinner to you at 4 p.m., food for everyone. No one should be alone on Christmas, especially not someone in crisis. I'll bring Susan Mitchell too, since my kids can't make it this year. Her kindness steadied me. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Daniel, his face a storm of anger and desperation. Where's Sarah? He demanded. Is she here? I stepped outside, partially closing the door to block him. Daniel, this isn't how to handle things with Sarah. So she's here, he snapped, voice rising. She's turned you against me, hasn't she? Filled your head with lies. No one's turned me against you, I said, heart racing but voice calm. Sarah needs space, and you should respect that. He laughed bitterly. Space? She's hiding from the mess she helped create. Did she tell you she maxed out her credit cards too? She loved the lifestyle when things were good. Daniel, I said firmly, you need professional help for your gambling addiction. His face twisted with fury. I don't have an addiction. I have investments that haven't paid off. Temporary setbacks. Investments? I echoed, incredulous. Is that what you call losing thousands at casinos? Taking cash advances to bet more while drowning in debt? Me stood on my paunch, the festive wreath a jarring contrast to our confrontation. In Daniel's eyes, I saw a war, addict versus the son who somewhere deep still respected me. You should leave, I said firmly. Come back when you're calmer, ready to talk about getting help. I'm not leaving without Sarah, he insisted, trying to push past me. I held my ground. Yes, you are. This is my home and I'm asking you to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police. His eyes widened. You'd call the cops on your son? On Christmas? I don't want to, I said honestly, but I will to keep boundaries and ensure safety. His shoulders slumped, defeated. Fine, I'll go, but tell Sarah this isn't over. She can't just walk away from our marriage without consequences. A chill ran through me. What does that mean, Daniel? Are you threatening her? He backpedaled. Not threatening, just saying there are legal and financial complications. Community property, shared debt. I wasn't convinced, but nodded. I'll tell her you stopped by. Now go. Daniel turned to leave, then paused. Merry Christmas, Mom, he said, his voice small, echoing the boy he'd once been. I'm sorry it turned out like this. I'm sorry too, I replied softly. I love you, Daniel, always will. But I can't support behaviors that hurt you or others. Inside, Sarah stood at the stairs, pale with tension. I heard everything, she said. I'm so sorry you faced that. It's not your fault, I assured her. Daniel's actions are his own. She nodded, unconvinced. Did you mean it about calling the police? Yes, I said firmly. Caring sometimes means hard boundaries, even when it hurts. Sarah's eyes glistened. Thank you for standing up for me, for giving me a safe place. I squeezed her arm. That's what family does, Sarah. Despite everything, we're still family. Something softened in her expression. Yes, she whispered. I suppose we are. That afternoon, Clara Evans arrived with a feast. Susan Mitchell in tow with side dishes and apple pie. William joined us, bringing a chocolate Yule log and champagne. To celebrate being together, he said, handing me the bottle. Our impromptu Christmas dinner was unlike any I'd known. Around my table sat my neighbor Susan, friend Clara, new romantic interest William, and Sarah, navigating her separation from Daniel. Yet the room brimmed with warmth, laughter, and unexpected joy. Sarah, initially withdrawn, warmed as Susan shared outrageous online dating tales. This one guy claimed to be a fitness buff, Susan said, gesturing with her fork. Showed up in stained sweatpants, clearly allergic to exercise. Laughter filled the room, and I caught William's gaze, his eyes warm with admiration, perhaps love. He raised his glass in a private toast. I mirrored it, gratitude swelling for his presence. After dinner, Sarah asked to call her parents. I'm ready to talk, she said. Use the den for privacy, I offered. She returned 20 minutes later, eyes red but relieved. They're coming tomorrow to talk in person, she said. They were shocked, angry at Daniel, but supportive. Dad said he's proud of me for facing the truth. When our guests left and Sarah retired, I sat in my living room, reflecting. 6 weeks ago, I'd been exhausted, funding a lifestyle not mine, hoping for a place at Daniel's Christmas table. Now, I'd hosted my own gathering, sheltered Sarah, and begun a promising relationship with William, who valued me for me. The road ahead was daunting. Daniel's addiction required a long recovery, if he pursued it. Sarah faced dismantling her marriage. I had to support them without enabling. But I felt ready, armed with newfound strength to set boundaries and prioritize myself. 3 months later, spring warmed Willow Creek. In my backyard, the Oak Ridge Garden Club, newly formed, buzzed with activity. Susan demonstrated pruning, Clara handed out seedlings, and William helped install a trellis for climbing roses. Sarah, now in her own apartment and navigating divorce proceedings complicated by Daniel's financial recklessness, planted herbs in a raised bed we'd built together. She'd found a marketing job, rebuilding her life free from appearances. Daniel had entered treatment after hitting rock bottom, gambling away alone from Sarah's parents. His recovery was fragile, marked by setbacks, but he was trying, and I was grateful. I'd retired from Mercy General, volunteering 1 day a week in the cardiac unit. My days brimmed with painting classes, travel with William, halls with Margaret, and quiet evenings reading. Canceling Daniel's mortgage payments had given us both something greater: lives built on truth, not illusion. That evening, on my porch, William took my hand as the sunset glowed. "What I admire most, Elizabeth," he said, "is your courage to change, grow, rewrite your story when others might settle." I smiled, heart full, knowing this wasn't the Christmas I'd planned, but it had sparked the life I deserved. I smiled, squeezing William's hand as the sunset bathed our Willow Creek garden in gold, its roses and herbs promising vibrant blooms for seasons ahead. "It's never too late to become who you are meant to be," I said. "I finally understand that. This piece wasn't about perfect holidays or social approval. It was about living authentically, setting boundaries, and valuing myself alongside those I loved. The greatest gift wasn't financial freedom or the relationships enriching my life, but the certainty that I deserved respect from Daniel, Sarah, the world, and myself." A year after that transformative Christmas, I stood at the Willow Creek Community Center, addressing our support group for families of gambling addicts, a lifeline I'd come to cherish. "Loving someone with an addiction is brutal," I began, meeting eyes that mirrored my own struggles. "It's worse when it's your child, someone you've poured your life into protecting." Nods rippled through the room, faces etched with love and grief. "I thought paying Daniel's mortgage, working myself sick, was what good mothers do," I said, memories of exhaustion and pneumonia sharp. But I was enabling a habit tearing him apart. An older man dabbed a tear. His daughter had lost her home to gambling debts his wife had shared. Stopping those payments felt like betrayal. I continued. Every instinct screamed I was failing, but it was the deepest love I could offer, forcing truth to surface. After, a woman approached, clutching her purse. "My son cut me off 3 months ago, after I refused his loan," she whispered. "Did I do right?" I touched her hand. "Recovery's a jagged path, for them and us. Standing firm is courage, not cruelty." She nodded, tears falling. "Thank you." Walking home through crisp winter air, snow dusting Cedar Lane, I marveled at the year's changes. Daniel, 6 months sober, attended Gamblers Anonymous diligently, working with a counselor to chip away at his debts. Our weekly calls, though cautious, grew warmer, his apologies more genuine. Sarah finalized her divorce in October, settled downtown, and launched a marketing consultancy. She dated a gentle accountant, met through her therapist, and joined me for Sunday dinners, our bond now a friendship rooted in shared resilience. Charles and Diana Coleman, once distant, joined our support group, channeling their shock into advocacy, funding a hospital program for addicts. At home, William cleared my driveway, his smile warming the chill. "How was the meeting?" he asked. "Vital," I said, taking his gloved hand. "It helps people. You give hope without glossing over the pain," he said, squeezing my fingers. Inside, our Christmas tree glowed, gifts stacked beneath. Tomorrow, Daniel, Sarah, Clara, her husband, Susan, and Margaret with her boyfriend would gather, a tapestry of connection unimaginable a year ago. William paused on the porch. About Sedona in spring, and the house, his rare nerves surfaced. "We should sell our places, buy one together." "It's time," I said, certainty anchoring me. His eyes lit up. "Really?" I touched his cheek, snowflakes melting under my fingers. "This is a chapter I showed me. The scariest choices lead to joy." Inside our warm home. Not my whole story, gratitude swelled. Boundaries and painful truths had reshaped my life and those around me. It wasn't easy, but standing on this threshold, rich with possibility, I knew it was worth it.